Welcome to Strawberry Inc. I'm your host, Santiago, and in this episode, we dive into the tragic murder of rapper XXXTentacion. His death shocked the music world in 2018. His story did not end with death. Today, we'll explore the events that led to his death and all the proceedings that unfolded due to it. It was June 18th, 2018, when 20-year-old Jahseh Ricardo Onfroy, mainly known by his stage name XXXTentacion, was gunned down in broad daylight outside of a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. He was driving out of the dealership's parking lot in his black convertible. XXXTentacion had withdrawn from a bank earlier that day and did not hide the money when leaving the bank. He was holding racks of cash in his hand and was headed to the Riva Motorsports dealership with his uncle to purchase a vehicle. He was with his uncle, Leonard Kerr, who ran out of the car as guns were pointed at them and then called the cops. The rapper, whose turbulent life and rise to fame had captivated millions, was shot during a robbery. This was after him and his uncle had gone into the dealership to ask about the vehicles and then walked out without buying anything. They got back into the car they got there with and headed out, but on their way out of the dealership, they were approached by robbers who had been stalking them ever since spotting them with money at the bank. This group of robbers had many times stopped people in this way coming out of a bank to steal money from them. They made a living mainly by doing so, aside from their main jobs. So these two gunmen were masked, wearing ski masks, and the altercation was brief. They were asking Triple X to get out of the car, but he was too worried to do so. He wanted to negotiate with the robbers and kept asking them what was going on. They shot him without explaining why they were pointing guns at him or why they wanted him to get out of the car. Triple X was struck multiple times. The shooters quickly fled the scene, leaving XXXTentacion in his car unresponsive. He was later rushed to the hospital, the Deerfield Beach Health Center, but did not make it. His death was confirmed as murder and an investigation began. There was no way to save him due to his excessive and incurable blood loss caused by this shooting. The investigators soon identified the suspects behind the shooting, a group of 4 black males involved in a planned robbery. Surveillance footage captured 2 of them walking into the dealership Riva Motorsports to spy on X, then leaving and getting back into a black SUV that had been rented. Surveillance footage throughout the area was reviewed, and it showed this black SUV, this rented one, following X's car from the bank. Investigators went to the rental car's business and spoke with their staff. The staff cooperated, and it was determined that this suspected rental car, this getaway vehicle, had been checked out by someone named Trayvon Newsom. Trayvon Newsom, upon reviewing more footage, is believed to have been one of the 2 gunmen who approached X, not the one that shot him though. But at this point, they already had one name tied to this investigation. Therefore, a search for him was underway. Less than 48 hours later, another suspect, Dedrick Williams, was pulled over by the police in Pompano Beach for driving with an expired driver's license. His appearance had already been made public as the surveillance footage of him walking into the dealership to stock on X was already all over the news. Dedrick was arrested and taken to the Deerfield Beach police station. There, officers noticed that he looked very similar to the person in question who had been spotted in that surveillance footage. Therefore, they showed his image to the investigators of the Broward County Sheriff's Office, and those investigators confirmed that he was indeed a suspect. Moved over to a different building, the Broward County Sheriff's Office headquarters. That was where he and his uncle over the phone made arrangements to get him a private lawyer. Due to Diedrich having been tied to a murder investigation, he was not prosecuted for his unrelated driving of an expired license offense. It was documented in the system of the Broward County Circuit Court, but the prosecutor's office ignored the complaint. The day after his arrest, he appeared before Broward County Magistrate Kim Malika, who ordered that he remain in jail without bond for the time being. That jail, the Broward County Jail. There were a lot of speculations regarding this shooting. Already, 2 people had been identified. One of them being Trayvon Newsom, the one who checked out the rental car and had been wanted. The other one being Diedrich Williams, who had just unexpectedly been arrested. But who were these 2 remaining suspects? Because investigators confirmed they were 4 total. Some believed that rapper Soulja Boy, who was in the area and had beef with X, could have been involved and taken part in the shooting, as well as another artist he had beef with, Drake. He too was in the area. However, there was insufficient evidence to tie him to the shooting. The phone of Diedrich Williams was investigated through an extraction at the sheriff's headquarters, and it was determined that he had been in contact with Robert Allen, a local known landscaper, who, online, once the investigators searched him up, had a picture that matched the person he was in the dealership with, Robert Allen. Therefore, a search started for Robert Allen as well. At this point, 3 suspects were officially tied to the shooting. Then, investigators took a deeper look into that rental car. It was returned to the business, and more surveillance footage was checked, but this time of the outside part of the business, their parking lot. 4 black males had been entering this dealership together in order to make sure that car would be checked out, and they had came in one single vehicle together. The license plate number of that vehicle was visible. It was scanned. The information came back as this vehicle being the one of Michael Boatwright. Therefore, potentially, Michael Boatwright was too involved in the shooting at this point. It looked like as if the investigators so quickly had the 4 names noted within this investigation. And at this point, a shocking discovery was made. Michael Boatwright was already in custody. He had also been the suspect in other cases in the past, and had not yet been brought to justice for those past offenses. He had been caught in the street selling cocaine and was arrested before being brought to the headquarters of the Broward County Sheriff's Office. He had been wanted for violating his probation 2 times throughout 2 different cases. Michael was also wanted for illegally selling marijuana in 2015. He was officially tied to the murder while in the Broward headquarters. Once tied to the death of XXXTentacion, he was formally charged with first-degree murder. During questioning, he appeared intoxicated, under the influence of drugs. When initially arrested, Michael Boatwright had been held on 4 charges. He faced a total of 5 cases, one of them being the murder of Triple X. Michael's 4 initial charges were first-degree misdemeanor possession of cannabis, 2 of those, a second-degree felony of cocaine trafficking, and a third-degree felony of drug paraphernalia possession. He also faced 2 felony probation violations, one of them unclassified and the other in the third degree. The probation violations were at this point what would keep him locked up. Then once Michael was tied to the murder investigation, he appeared before Circuit Judge Elizabeth Scherer, who denied him bond as well. Therefore, he would remain in the Broward County Jail for the murder case, the 2 probation violations, and the 2 drugs cases he was tied to. After a further investigation, the names of all 4 confirmed suspects were brought to light. They were Michael Boatwright and Dedrick Williams, who were already locked up. Then there were 2 suspects still at large, the last ones, Trayvon Newsom and Robert Allen. All of them had been tied to a criminal probe within the state of Florida, and their motive appeared to be to steal money from people in the streets leaving banks. Unfortunately, one of those people was XXXTentacion. On June 27, 2018, a public memorial service was held for him at the BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida. There was also an open casket viewing right before. The following day, a private service was held right before he was buried. It occurred at the Boca Raton Memorial Park, his final resting place. And before burying the body, there was a private visitation in their building. Later on, one of the suspects at large, Robert Allen, was tracked down and arrested in Eastman, Georgia, a rural town, the countryside. U.S. Marshals surrounded this Georgia home, which was his sister's. He was spotted peeking through the home's window, and for the safety of his family, he surrendered to the marshals, being arrested outside the home after having walked out with his hands up. The marshals then put him in handcuffs and took him away to the Dodge County Sheriff's headquarters. There, he was informed that he was a suspect of a murder investigation in Florida. He was meanwhile booked into the Dodge County Jail in Georgia to await extradition back to Florida. At the Dodge County District Court before Magistrate Lonnie Parkerson, Robert Allen waived extradition. The following day, he was picked up by the Broward County Sheriff's Office and driven back to Florida. At the office's headquarters, Robert helped investigators out during interrogation. He admitted that he was upset about not being paid as much for helping out in the robbery. Therefore, he snitched on his 3 co-defendants, telling investigators everything. He confirmed that the 2 suspects already locked up in Florida had a part in the XXX murder, and that he himself took part in it as well. He also told investigators about the 4th and last suspect, the one who had already been tied to the investigation and who was still at large, Trayvon Newsom. Robert confirmed that their motive was to rob XXX since they had seen him walk out of a bank holding a bunch of cash. Robert was then booked into the Broward County Jail, and a massive manhunt to look for Trayvon Newsom started. Investigators wanted him in custody urgently, and the search only grew more. Robert as well told investigators where the gun they used was buried, and it was successfully recovered. Another critical piece of information he told investigators is what each one of them did. He admitted to having walked in to stock on XXX with Dedrick and told the investigators that Dedrick was the getaway driver of that rental car. That Trayvon was one of the gunmen, as well as Michael Boatwright, and most importantly, that Michael Boatwright was the one who shot XXX. Then, upon further examination, the gun recovered thanks to Robert Allen matched the bullets found in the body of XXXTentacion when he underwent emergency surgery. One failure was that Trayvon, days after killing Triple X, had gone to court over a traffic ticket for failing to turn on his turning light when turning left. He was attempting to have this ticket thrown out. Trayvon, when X had already been killed, went to the Broward County Circuit Courthouse and met with the clerk, Brenda Foreman, in order to have this ticket excused. However, the clerk refused to vacate the ticket, so he was ordered to pay the price of the fine, $170. Trayvon walked out of the courthouse without any of the staff knowing that he was a murder suspect. The staff should have stopped him. However, they did not. They were not paying attention. Little did they know a loose killer was wandering their halls. Trayvon had the guts to show up to a courthouse after having killed somebody, at least after having taken part in the death of someone. The following day, Trayvon paid the full fine on the court's website with his phone. He then fled the area. And this was also a shame. Investigators could have looked into the court system to track his phone down and capture him. Meanwhile, Robert Allen had his first court appearance before Magistrate Malika. He was denied bond and was assigned to have public defender James Lewis represent him. Assistant State Attorney Anthony Lowe quickly presented the criminal probe to a grand jury at the Broward County Circuit Court. This grand jury went on to indict them on 2 severe charges: capital murder and first-degree felony armed robbery. Attorney Lowe proposed to have these be the charges moving forward and dismissed the initial ones filed formally, the grand theft auto and first-degree murder ones. The defendants were arraigned on different days. Michael Boatwright was supposed to be arraigned on July 23rd that year, but waived his right to appear in court that day. Therefore, the presiding magistrate, Melissa Brown, filed not guilty pleas on his behalf. 2 days later, Judge Tim Bailey appointed public defender Joseph Kimmock to represent him. This decision was made through paperwork, as he had not had one assigned yet. Dedrick Williams was arraigned on July 24th that year before Magistrate Malika. He pleaded not guilty to the charges, and that private attorney he had consulted with at the Broward headquarters, Mauricio Padilla, confirmed that he would indeed be defending Dedrick in this case. Then on August 1st, Robert Allen was arraigned by Judge Ushon. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. Robert changed attorneys and got public defender James Lewis of Fort Lauderdale to defend him. Because Lewis knew where to go, he could continue telling Robert how to cooperate with investigators, and he could take care of Robert from this point on. The last wanted suspect, Trayvon Newsom, hired Fort Lauderdale attorney George Rares to represent him. On August 8th, Trayvon went to his office. There, he was met by Broward County Sheriff's deputies and arrested. The deputies took him to their headquarters. Their investigators confirmed that all 4 suspects were already locked up. Therefore, by the end of the day, these 4 suspects were all at the Broward County Jail, and the search for them would close. This investigation was reaching its end. There was a new prosecutor appointed for all defendants, Assistant DA Pascal Achille. She sought the death penalty against the getaway driver, Dedrick Williams. However, she eventually did not seek that due to a lack of evidence to pursue it. Therefore, the sentence that the 4 suspects could get was life in prison without parole. Fast forward to 2019, and the legal proceedings were in full swing. The prosecution's case was built on witness testimony, surveillance footage from the scene, and the fact that the robbery was not spontaneous but premeditated. There was also a twist in the case. Trayvon Newsom pleaded not guilty before Judge Michael Ushan, and Ushan kept all four in jail without bond for further proceedings. In 2020, Robert Allen, the snitch, one of the accused, struck a plea deal with the prosecution. He pled guilty to a lesser charge of second-degree murder and testified in the trial against his co-defendants in exchange for a reduced sentence. He as well pleaded guilty to his initial robbery charge through the indictment. This plea deal was significant, as it provided the state with crucial testimony that would be used against his three co-defendants. They too could have taken a plea deal but refused to do so, having no remorse and proceeding to trial. Allen's plea deal meant he could avoid life in prison, but the deal came with its own set of controversies. Critics argued that it undermined the severity of the crime, while others believed it was necessary to secure convictions for the remaining suspects. Allen's testimony was key in explaining how the plot was carried out. He told the court that Boatwright was the one who pulled the trigger, while Williams and Newsom helped orchestrate the robbery. Prosecutor Achille appointed two other state attorneys to help her out. Anthony Lowe, who had been in the case in the very beginning, and YMW Melly's prosecutor, Alexandra Buckaloo. If you're not aware, Melly is a rapper who is currently tied to an unrelated murder investigation. In the aftermath, the trial for Boatwright, Williams, and Newsom continued. It was held in the beginning of 2023, with jury selection starting in February and testimony in March. Judge Ushan refused to acquit the defendants and ordered that this jury of 12 members and 4 alternates vote on a verdict. On March 20th, 2023, this jury found the defendants guilty on all charges. During the trial, Trayvon Newsom spotted Robert Allen walking out to go to court and shouted, "You are working with the white man." During conversations among them, they called Robert Allen a snitch. This was brought up in trial, and throughout the trial, they made eye contact with each other and laughed as evidence was being presented. One of the defendants, the most disrespectful one, Michael Boatwright, constantly turned to the family of Triple X and smiled at them, blowing kisses, making fun of them. XXXTentacion's death was more than just a tragic loss of the music industry. It was a culminated life filled with turmoil, but also the beginning of a legal battle that exposed the darker sides of fame and the criminal world. It was a national reminder that when you go to a bank to withdraw cash, you should secure that cash very well and hide it, especially if you're in a not so nice area. You should really watch out because somebody could be spying on you to rob you. The following month, on April 6, Dedrick Williams, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsom were sentenced by Judge Ushan to prison time. Before this hearing, Michael Boatwright appeared in court earlier to be sentenced for his other pending cases. He reached plea deals for them, pleading no contest to 2 drug offenses committed in 2018. The cocaine and cannabis possessions. For that, he received, by Judge Ushan, 5 years in prison and 364 days time served. He as well pleaded no contest to the other drugs case that he was wanted for since 2015. Judge Ushan delivered a sentence of 5 years in prison for that as well. He as well pleaded no contest to the 2 probation violations. One of them was discharged, and the other one, 5 years in prison. That was the sentence. These terms would all be run concurrent with one another, and to the murder case. Then it was time to continue on with the murder disposition. 2 remaining suspects were brought into court with him. Trayvon Newsom and Dedrick Williams. Judge Ushan imposed sentencing, bringing closure to the family of Triple X. Trayvon received life in prison without parole and a concurrent 10 years. Dedrick was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He had the robbery charge added onto it. Michael was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus a consecutive 30 years for robbery. All extra years were thanks to the robbery conviction. That same day, Judge Ushan refused to redo their trial. The 3 of them were afterwards taken to the Inmate Reception Center of Fort Lauderdale. About 10 days later, they were admitted into their permanent state prisons, where they will spend the rest of their lives. Trayvon Newsom into the Charlotte Correctional Institution in Punta Gorda, Florida. Dedrick Williams into the Wakula Annex in Crawfordville, Florida. And Michael Boatwright into the Martin Correctional Institution in Indiantown, Florida. The 3 have misbehaved in prison and have had to be put into solitary confinement several times. The 3 have appealed their case, and that is pending. On May 17th, Judge Ushan sentenced Robert Allen. Due to him having taken the plea deal, he waived his right to appeal the case. And anyways, that sentence was 7 years in prison for murder and 20 years of probation for robbery. Prosecutor Achille had been in charge of him. Robert, by being detained for 5 years, only had 2 years left of the sentence. Judge Ushan even thanked him for having cooperated with investigators. The judge claimed that Robert Allen had matured while detained, and that being in jail for so long had benefited him, because now he knows he has to choose the right crowd to hang out with, and that he should avoid anybody involved in criminal activity. The judge even stated to him, "The Robert Allen today is not the same one that I arraigned 5 years ago." Robert was hidden by the system in the Inmate Reception Center of Fort Lauderdale after that sentencing. He was afterwards admitted into a state prison in Rayford, Florida, the 83rd Avenue facility. On October 26, 2023, he was released for good behavior. Right now, he is doing his probation. The other 3, sentenced to life, remain locked up. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow the show, subscribe to the Strawberry Ink YouTube channel, look me up and follow me on socials. Like this episode and share it to your loved ones. Have a good rest of your day and take care.